Okay, we move forward. So I was saying that it's nice to have in the audience we have entrepreneurs, we have government officials, we have students, we have a wide variety of people interested, and also we have online people joining in. So welcome again. So my topic is the supply chain and production risk management in the high-scale insect farming. This is also the topic of my thesis that I released and published this year. And something that tells about the novelty of this industry is that my thesis of this topic is the first one to be released in the world, or at least one of the first ones. I have not heard of any other similar works. Besides my studies, I've been working in a company called Insect, or how us Finns call it Insect, in Paris. I was working there in production and logistic development, and now after I came back from France, I've been working with IFF Automation with 2 engineers. So my structure of this presentation, it comes in 4 parts. First, I tell about what is the supply chain, very basic, so we're all in the same page, what I'm talking about, and then I go to the first main topic, that is the supply risk. So what is the supply risk in this industry especially, and what are the reasons behind it? Then I go to the next big topic, that is lack of knowledge, that is very much related to the novelty of the industry. Then thirdly is the risk management and the risk mitigation, so how to control the risks in the industry. And then I wrap up with conclusions, and then I hope we will have a lot of questions, and so you can post them to Twitter. My Twitter account is @Ilkka Taponen, and also we have the Agritalous account over there. So I hope we will get some good questions. Okay, so let's move to the first slide. So the supply chain is usually visualized vertically because we call the supply chain like it's like a stream of supply. So it flows downwards, so we have the downstream and the upstream of this logistic stream. And in this example, or this way I have visualized it here, is very simplified, and it resembles something that it could happen now when this industry develops. So we have first the raw materials that are the feed for the insects and the eggs of the insects. Sometimes the eggs comes from within the farm itself, so these can be either internal or external functions of the supply chain. So internally in one company, or these can be all separate companies. Also we have the third raw material is the utilities like water and electricity. Then we have the insect farmer that gets the raw materials and then further gives out to the downstream, to the processor, 2 main outputs that are the animals of the insects themselves, and then the feces of the insects, that is the frass that can be used as a fertilizer. Then we have the retailers that buy from the processors, let's say processor that creates insect food protein bar, as a given example from Johanna. And then we have the end customer lastly in the chain. So this resembles quite a lot of traditional agriculture, and what is different is the number of players in each of these steps. So there is a word I'm going to be repeating many times, and it's lack of horizontal integration. That also comes from the novelty aspect of the industry and increases the risks in this area. So let's go to the next slide, and here the main topic, the first main topic, is the supply risk. And then further I have broken it down to 2 different sub topics that are lack of supply and lack of horizontal integration. So here I have now repeated it twice. Someone can keep count how many times it comes. So lack of supply is a risk that affects in 2 ways. So if I start with the one extreme example, is the fish feed that is one of the possibilities where insect products can be used. So fish feed is produced every year millions of tons. So their demand for the supply is very huge. So right now, when we are still in developing of this industry, the companies are just developing their big facilities, and the high-scale industry is just coming now. In the coming years, there is no way that these, even all the supply combined, would even make a promille of the needed amounts of insect or like sorry, the protein that the fish feed companies need. So this creates a barrier of entry for big players to start using insect products. But then when we go to another end of the need, so we have, let's say, a restaurant that would want to use insect products. So their demand is a lot lower, let's say 100 kilos per year. So this is something that already can be supplied by the farmers, but when there is a lack of horizontal integration, it means that there's a lack of different players, different facilities offering this supply. So horizontal integration, it means that when I showed in the previous slide the vertical supply, so then when talking horizontally is like how many different players there are in one level of the supply. So now in this example of the restaurant, it is able to buy the 100 kilos per year or a week. Maybe there's only very few companies that can provide this. So if something happens for the supply, there's let's say a fire, or the company just decides to sell someone else, there is no way that this restaurant is able to get replacing product. And this is another form of supply risk, but just in a different step of the supply chain. So what we can learn from this, that for one player in the supply chain to control its own risks, it must control the risks of the others, especially in the upstream. So for a processor of insect products, they need to be aware of the risks of the insect farms. And let's move forward. So here is one big topic that creates risks within an insect farm. So the limited knowledge. So again, when we are talking about industry that is very new, there is limited knowledge, like academic knowledge, but also the companies that are doing the farming have very limited knowledge of what is really going to happen when they are doing high-scale farming. So all the knowledge that there is based on assumptions and calculations, but not on historical data. So we don't really know what is the performance of the insect species and how different feeds will affect their growth, and how these will affect the biggest risk, that is a pathogen breakout in a farm. So the pathogens are another question that is very, very, very unknown, but can cause death of the whole colony in a facility. This is something that Jörgen Eilenberg will talk more later today. He's a world, if not #1, let's say top 3 guy. He is really someone who knows about the biological risks of this industry, but this is something that concerns pretty much all farms. So I have written there the high hazard risks. So just like supply risk, hazard risk is another category of risks in logistics. And hazard risks traditionally is something that is out of control of a company. So it might be a volcano or an embargo that we have now between Russia and EU, or it can be just anything that is out of control of the company. Another form of risks is operational risks. So these are risks happening within a company in the production. But now when there is such a lack of knowledge, some of the operational risks are actually hazard risks for insect farms, because it's very hard to mitigate something that you don't understand the source. And now I'm talking about the extreme example of pathogens. So how can you really consider a pathogen breakout as an operational risk when you don't know where is it coming from and you don't know how to mitigate them? So there are some ways to mitigate. I will tell later on, but this is something that affects especially this industry and is highlighted compared to others. Yeah, so operational risks. So this is I also already mentioned. So when there's a lack of knowledge, it leads to the risks, but also it makes it difficult to forecast your production. So when we don't know the performance of the animals, we will suffer from high standard deviation of quality and quantity of the output. And when we have high standard deviation, it's hard for us to forecast, and we will end up with high inventory carrying cost. So I'm sorry I'm shooting all these terms to you, but so I guess it's necessary evil. So when we want to be sure that we will not be left without a stock to sell to our customers, what we promise to deliver, we have to be aware of the high standard deviation in quantity and in quality. So we farm a little bit more to be sure that we are able to deliver the downstream. But then when there's also the question of quality, even if we are able to deliver right amount, it might be then the protein or the fat content of the product is not satisfactory, and it's in the low level of the standard deviation that the company has in its operation. So then again it builds up the the storage of ready products, and then you need to combine the high end and the low end of the standard deviation and then create a standard product that you are able to deliver. So this creates more capital that is locked in your warehousing and creates costs for the company. Yeah, so basically I'm saying here that the hazard risks are more there are more hazard risks than operational risks. That is more like tilted in this direction. All right, let's move on to risk mitigation. So usually when there is a hazard risk has been identified by a company, insurance is the way to go, that you just insure your production against a forest fire or an earthquake, whatever might happen. But now when there is a hazard risk that is so unknown as the pathogen breakout, are you able to get an insurance against something that is so unknown? So let's imagine that you suffer a pathogen breakout that kills all your insects, and you go to the insurance company and they ask, is it something that you did not do, or is it something that you did but you shouldn't have, or is it really something that you couldn't control? But there is no one in the world that can answer it. So the insurance companies are most likely to give a very high price tag that you will consider very carefully if you really want to get involved with that. So right now, when we are still in the situation where we are building the knowledge, so the risk pooling is the way to go. That is a conclusion of my thesis. And so risk pooling means that instead of having all your eggs in the same bucket, you share them. So if you spill it over, you don't break them all at once. So you can either have multiple departments within one facility for farming, or you have multiple multiple farms. So if one gets affected by a pathogen breakout or other type of risk, you can then segregate this one section and then save all the other eggs that you hold dear. But it is also quite difficult to do the segregation. So let's say that you have a farm that has 5 departments, but if the pathogens, let's say bacteria, are airborne, if you're using the same AC system for the whole facility, the same air will circulate and contaminate all the departments, even if there's a wall there between. So now you also see that the risks that the insect farms have are affecting or like multiplying maybe the risks of the supply risk. So it's not. So I think we can go to the last slide, please. The conclusions. So the lack of businesses in the supply chain is a risk, the supply risk. But then when there's an extra risks involved with the few players that are involved in the supply chain, they are kind of like add to it. So again, to control your own risks in the supply chain, if you are involved in this industry, you must be also aware of how the companies control their own risks in the other steps of the chain. Well, if I would stop here, it would give you a very grim feeling about the situation, but it is not the case. I have an example from the traditional agriculture, and from this summer in North America, 10% of egg-laying hens died of avian flu. And this is an industry that has so much more R&D resources, a lot more historical data than insect farming, and still they are affected by pathogen breakout. But what can be now a positive side for insect economy is that we are now starting from this new millennia, and we are not like carrying the weight of the past. So we can start with new standards, with automation, and really like get to a higher level very quickly. But anyway, I don't want to go too deep to the traditional farming. It's not my specialty. But anyway, now when we look at the future in other ways, we are creating new technologies, new ways of operation, and the good manufacturing practices are coming. So these ways we are able to bring down the high standard deviation of production, bring the prices down, attract more players to the market, and this way also tackle the supply risk. Yes, so last slide, it says thank you. Yes.
Okay, thanks for your presentation. Now there is one very understandable question. Where are you located at the moment? Where is your company located at the moment?
Yeah, in Helsinki, in Finland.
Okay, yeah. Thanks. Any other questions?
Yeah, hello, this is Arthur. I'm from Siris Oy. I have a question. Now that we are thinking about insect breeding in Finland, do you see that Finland has some advantage of having this climate when thinking of pathogens, for example? I mean, in other sense that, to say it in a different way, are the risks of pathogens in Finland less than in other climates?
I don't think it's a different case, because anyway the facilities are climate controlled. So no matter what's happening outside, internally it's going to be comparable to, let's say, Netherlands, that is now the leading country. The pathogens can come in through feed, and or feed, or they can be airborne. It can be lack of cleaning, the water. So no, I don't think there's a difference.
Okay, I was thinking that if we have like mass production and the like local the climate inside farms, where like the pathogens are growing there and they might spread from farm to farm, I think that risk should be less, at least during winter in Finland.
Yeah, you mean that the transportation between?
Yes.
Well, then, yeah, I guess then the companies.
that was the reasoning behind my
okay.
question, and I was thinking like maybe you you know of some cases where this might have occurred.
Yeah. So okay. So for one example is that that you bring in feed that includes unwanted insect eggs. So one way to kill them is this high impact, Entul leather is the machine. So you kill the insect eggs by this high impact circulation machine. So I think other ways to put it outside in Finland in the winter, the same patch of feed. But anyway, so I think the companies just, they suffer from the same risks no matter where they are. And it's just a matter of how they mitigate the risks then.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks.
Please.
Okay, thank you very much for very interesting presentation. And where would you put your money if you would have some for research? What would be your first priorities? What are the worst gaps in knowledge? Is it the new antibiotics for veterinary medicine research? Which are correct ones for the insects? So.
Yeah, very interesting question. I think there in the world there are very little knowledge for medication for insects, and I don't think that's the way to go. The best way is just to provide the best possible living environment for the insects, and this is also like an ethical question that is an advantage over traditional farming. And now the best way to make sure that the insects don't catch any pathogen breakout is to make sure that they are living in a healthy environment. That's how they grow the fastest and they lay the most eggs. You cannot vaccinate insects because well, I think this is more question to Jürgen Eilenberg. He will tell about this biological side more. But I think it's the best where I would like to put my money in this case is what are the best ways of farming. Just the good manufacturing practices. That's the thing that will bring a good improvement.
My name is Jarkko Nimi and I'm from Natural Resources Institute Finland. My question is that you mentioned several risks that are related to insects farming. So which of them would you consider the most important? I mean, if in terms of continuation of business.
Yeah. Yeah. So the pathogen breakout can kill all your insects in your farm, and due to the lack of horizontal integration, if you lose your colony, it might be that you are not able to purchase replacing insects or insect eggs because there's no one to buy from. So yeah, that's the worst for sure, the worst thing that can happen.
Okay, my question would be how this quite specific nature of the risks related to insect economy or insect farming, how does it affect to the growth of this whole industry? So how critical issue this risk management is for the whole industry?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, the lack of supply right now is a barrier of entry, and also the lack of horizontal integration is a barrier of entry. So this requires then pioneer companies in all steps of the supply chain, that there will be the brave ones that take the insect products like let's say to a restaurant, and now in North America we see a lot of protein bars being produced. So I think it's something that must be done by organic growth instead of giant leaps. And once there is enough supply, then bigger players will join in for sure.
Okay. And my second question would be that the public regulation is also kind of a risk management. It's risk management for the audience or for the consumers. And then there is risk management for the businesses to make business viable.
Yeah.
So are these two strands of risk management, are they aligned in this business, or are they opposite or conflicting? Or
yeah. So I think they are aligned, and as Santtu mentioned, some kind of scandal would be something that has a very negative effect on the industry. So in my opinion, it is very good that the European Union is cautious about these cases, so they are protecting the industry also from jumping too far ahead with one step, and this way it protects the consumers but also the industry, even though it feels quite frustrating that they are like holding us back. But I think these interests are aligned.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions, any other comments? Okay, please. Just a moment.
Hello, my name is Ture Parvi and I'm from University of Helsinki. I just want to make a few comments. One thing, there is some experience of use of, for example, antibiotics in insect keeping. In beekeeping it has been done, so it's not completely something out of the box. And also one other thing, I think there is already quite a bit of information, but it's maybe buried in some of the old research, because many of the entomologists have been studying insects in like 60 years ago. So I think there is a time for some real good old-fashioned literature research when digging into these issues.
Yeah, thanks for the very good comment. Few things to that is that the insects that are being reared are all individual species. So then, like you mentioned, beekeeping, bees are very different species than mealworms or locusts or house crickets. So if you have something that works for bees, it might be it's not working with some other insect species. And also the difference is the scale. Like mealworm is, like you mentioned, for example, mealworm has been studied for a long time, but it's all in very small scale. So now we're talking about more than 10,000 times the scale. So it has the different risks. But you are right, you made a good point.
Okay, if we don't have any other questions or comments, we will move on and thank
Yes.
again Ilkka Taponen
Yes.
for this
Thank you.
presentation.